Welcome back to the Marketing MadMen on Extra 106.3. Nick Constantino here with Joe Ciucci and Tom McCorkle. And we are going to do what I usually do in the last segment. We're going to speed it up and do it now. So we're going to play advice you would give your younger self or advice that you would give to people entering into these industries. And we're going to have lots of industries to cover, okay? So if Tom, with you, we're going to do real estate and sales. Joe, with you, we're going to do musician and lawyer, okay? So that's a far-ranging things of advice. But
got it.
Joe, let's start with you. So obviously, if you're starting to play the drums, have a good relationship with your parents so you don't drive them crazy. But
Correct.
what other advice would you give to people, to musicians who are like, am I good enough to make it? Because you've built a career, you left it for some time, but you said how important the charity is and almost not taking yourself too seriously. What advice do you give to somebody who's 15 years old, playing the drums, that thinks they can make a living out of it?
Well, in terms of drums, I definitely don't take myself too seriously. And I think that it goes a long way because I've been able to become really good friends with what I call the real drummers of the world.
Okay.
Rich Redmond of Jason Aldean, or Daniel De Los Reyes in the Zac Brown Band, or doing work for the band Skid Row.
Okay. Elaborate on why those are real drummers.
So when I call them real drummers, because when you look at their, or Chris Fryer, the Zac Brown Band, when he's very proud to say after a number of years, when he clicks occupation on his tax return, it says musician or drummer. If I did that, I would be living in a van down by the river, not what I'm doing now.
Sure.
So when I say
real drummers, career, lifetime.
When I say the real drummers,
they found a way to make a living out of being drummers.
Yes,
okay.
A hobbyist like me, which is and looking at those folks is, if you want to be a drummer or a musician, you need to do it because you love to do it.
Yeah.
Whether they have the best chops or you can stay in the pocket and play. If you're going to do it for the right reasons.
Yeah,
and
practice and rehearsal can't feel like practice and rehearsal. It has to be something that you love.
You have to do something that you love. So I'm stealing what those guys have said to me. And again, I use Rich Redmond as an example. He's been with Jason Aldean since day one, when they were 4 guys in a bar and 6 guys in the band. It's the same guys. But you look at what he's doing, they're on their 8th or 9th album.
Yep.
But he's doing a podcast. He's giving drum lessons. He's hustling his hiney off.
Yeah.
And all those guys are.
Yeah. But they do it because they love it.
They
not
do it
necessarily
because
they need the money. The benefit of is the exposure. It expands your reach and separates yourself just from Aldean and from the star name. It separates yourself from that. But he's doing it because you're loving. You're not doing a podcast to get, I promise you, if anyone's listening to the podcast, you're not doing it to get 85 million people in money. It just doesn't exist out there. So you're doing it to expand your reach.
Yeah, he's expanding his reach, but he'll still come back to his core of, I love what I'm doing. And I have a CEO of a big client who have said, gets up on stage at a charity show and he's like, we pay that guy Ciucci and his firm millions of dollars a year. He's a better drummer than he is a lawyer. To which I'll say, that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
I was going to say.
And again,
a compliment or
so no. But when you're talking to me about being a lawyer, and I'm doing a lot of employment litigation or business litigation where there's a lot of high stakes, there's a lot of emotion. Whether it's a sex harassment case or a discrimination case, there's a very intense, a lot of emotion. So when these clients and friends see me play the drums and they're like, I've never seen you so happy. You're grinning from ear to ear. I mean, you see me, our band, we just get up there and you grip it and rip it. No one's calling you. No one's texting you. No one's emailing me.
Yeah.
So when I'm back to your initial question of what would you tell a younger self or somebody who wants to get into the, quote, music business, do you really love it?
Yeah.
Do you really love it?
Yeah.
And if you do, then just keep doing it.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point about like self-awareness. So one of the things, I was young and I was a bass clarinet player and I liked it. Like I liked the act of playing music. It was cool when you finally got good enough that you can play a song. But like I didn't love it. Like I was too busy doing other things at 13, 14 years old, chasing girls and doing all that stuff that I was like, it's a saxophone. Who gives, had I known how to seduce a woman with a saxophone, probably would have been a different thing.
It's not too late.
All we had was Kenny G staring at us. He's not seducing anybody. So it threw me off. So what about now? Obviously, we're talking more complexity about being a lawyer and in what you do. But let's go back to the early years, right? Litigation has changed. Lawyers have changed. The advertising has changed. You can't turn your head without seeing a big face on a billboard.
Yes.
But to lawyers starting out, what advice would you give, or to your younger self?
Well, and a bit of both. I mean, yesterday I'm with the CEO of the Georgia Association of Manufacturers. Great guy, and he's asking me to meet with his daughter, who is a younger lawyer, to mentor her. And, I spend a lot of time mentoring younger associates. And I'm back to, because it's a grind.
Yeah.
You want to build so many hours. I mean, it's that, we're all on that treadmill, running, and then I'll hit stop and go. Because it's when I'm giving that advice, it's also, to me, helpful because it makes me want to take my own advice,
right.
which is, do you enjoy what you're doing? Because I have some colleagues that, God bless them, they love the law and they love talking about the law and the newest case. That's not me. So what I would say, I'm back to a young lawyer. I was thinking about this yesterday when two super smart, very wealthy people, you would know the company, you would know the people. I'm back to, it's still humbling to me when they call and they say, we have a problem, we need your help, we want your advice.
Yeah.
And that's what I remind young lawyers of. And they'll get that when given the opportunity, when somebody says, I have a problem, I need your help. Help me fix this, help me avoid that. And again, that's what I have to remind myself of. That's what's been meaningful about the practice of law.
Yeah.
And it did change in COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, it got crazy. It got different.
Yeah, and we're gonna pick that conversation up because I think all the business here was disrupted. So Tom, let's start with being a salesperson.
Yeah.
Right. So I give unsolicited sales advice to people for a living also.
Right.
So I have my little things that I tell people. But what advice would you give to somebody that is either wants to be in sales or is racking their head, be like, am I cut out for this?
I think it's it kind of like ties in what Joe said. You got to do what you love. And I love being around people. I love making relationships, improving relationships, staying in touch with people. I always have. And I think it just kind of morphed into that. And I think as long as you're doing what you enjoy, anything can work out. I've heard a million people say, hey, if I do what I love, I never work a day in my life. I know that's cliche, but it is really true. And so, whether you're selling, surgical instruments or liquor or houses, it doesn't really matter. You need to develop relationships. And I think the advice I would give younger people is, get into what you enjoy. If you're not happy, move on. One of the things I was guilty about earlier in my career, I'd stay too long because I had the mentality that my father and my grandfather had, who were both in sales. You get a great job with a great company, you stay forever.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the case. No. Especially in today's market. And into
the ownership of companies change hands so many times.
Totally agree.
It's just impossible. That being said, look, I still look at resumes, and when I get the purple that's jumped 25 times by the time they're 35 years old, like there's red flags everywhere. And it would be very weird of me to take someone on. Like my younger brother, he's a couple years younger than me, lives in New York, he has great job to great job, but he's at 8. And someone keeps hiring him.
Yeah.
It's a tech industry. It's a weird world. They tend to bounce around more. But like at some point, I'm like, dude, you realize that there's going to be a boss who, when you really want the job, there's no freaking way I'm hiring you, right? But that's the thing you said. Loyalty is a two-way street. I will say one of the things that I try to explain to people. So, if you are selling widgets, you are transactional, and it is you're commoditizing. If you are selling solutions to problems, people will always come back. True. And in my career, my success has not been selling the assets to which this radio station has. My role has been, dude, I have a problem. I go, dude, that is not even in the realm of what I do. He goes, yeah, but you're the only guy who can fix it. Fix it. Hang up. And like, I'll go find a way to fix it. And if you are selling yourself as a problem solver versus someone selling a set widget, you will have a healthy, long career that you will probably, in most instances, undervalue what value you are to the people around you. And I think it is incredibly rewarding. And I think it is rewarding that it's almost, you don't get the recognition you deserve, but you also don't expect it. Because the recognition is watching other people succeed. Right, and then I'm 42 and I've been in this town for 10 years, and I'm already starting to see these pieces fall into place of people that are relying on me for things so far out of my scope of work. But again, I don't complain. I just, you know what? Hey, I'll figure it out. Because that's all someone needs every time once in a while. Someone to say, I'll figure it out. And even if you're wrong, they just appreciate the fact that you tried, because most people will just give you a complete load of crap.
Yeah, as long as you're making the effort, move forward, take the ball and run with it, and get something done.
And be honest. If you can't figure it out, say, I can't figure it out, but here's what I did to try.
This isn't going to work.
Yeah, for sure. What about... Again, let's skip the whole COVID part because this is going to be a separate conversation. What advice, now that you have your feet under you as a real estate agent, would you give to people that want to get into that industry?
I think tying into that with the sales part is, years ago I was working at Coca-Cola and we had a private audience with Steve Wynn in Vegas. Oh. It was maybe 40 of us. And he walked in and sat there and talked to us. And one of the things he said, I'll never forget this, was, hey, listen, I've been working in the casino business my whole life, but I quickly realized the only way to make money in the casino business is to own the casino. And I wish I had taken that advice 20 years ago when I heard it and went to work for myself like I do now. I mean, I'm my own guy. I've got people that work with me. We've got a strong team, and it's up to me to do whatever I want to do all day long, and I love it.
Yeah.
But scary.
But at the same token, the 30 years of experience you had leading in puts you in a position to succeed better than it would have if you was 21.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, if you had 20 years of experience on your own, you probably would have been more successful too. So it's a catch-22. Every person's different.
But I mean, I think, going to do what's going to make you happy is the main thing, and the money will come.
Yeah. I lived in Vegas for 7 years, which I'm sure we'll talk about in our off-the-air conversation. But the rumors of Steve Wynn were very true. So one of the rumors that always circled was whenever he interviewed somebody, he'd take you out to dinner.
Yeah.
And the number one trick was if you put seasoning on your food before trying it, he would end the meeting and kick you out right there. Because the number one thing, how do you know you need salt on something that you haven't even tried?
Right.
And it circled Vegas all the time. But I had a guy who actually ran all the nightclubs for the Wynn Hotels, Surrender and all those.
Yeah.
Great guy, crazy long stories. But he was like, no, this is a very true statement. He goes, and actually at this point, he's not testing whether you're salt or pepper. It's testing if you actually heard the rumors. And if you haven't, he doesn't want you anyway.
Yeah.
Because you have no finger on the pulse whatsoever. You have no finger on the pulse whatsoever. So, and look, that's great. I think, for me, as I think having kids has really changed a lot of perspectives.
Yeah.
I think the one thing you have to learn, at least for me, is that the first thing that you do as a manager and as a leader is think people should be like you, and there's nobody on earth that can be like you. So you have to start adjusting yourself to them, and it takes years. It took me 2-3 years to figure it out, and it's hard because you want to set a level expectation. But when you start talking to people on their level and seeing their flaws and weaknesses and how you can help them, you're going to always succeed. And the best players don't always best the big coaches. The best coaches don't always make the best owners. So not every salesperson is cut out to be a manager. It's hard. And
in fact, in my world, in the legal litigation world, I've given a lot of presentations over the years where I've said salespeople have generated millions in fees for me.
Yeah.
And the single biggest flaw you see is companies take their top salesperson and they want to make him the sales manager. They make he or she the sales manager when they don't want to be the sales manager. They want to be the top salesperson going on the top person sales trip, right? You've been there. That's what you were just talking about.
Yep.
It's not what they want to do. It's not what they excel at. But hey, let's promote he or she to sales manager.
Yeah. And again, but it happens in the NFL. I mean,
yes.
Antonio Pierce was just let go. Both players, and I'm blanking on the guy's name from New England. Both ex-players had 1 year of coaching and they were fired. So it doesn't always work that way.
Right.
I think one of the things about when you're the other part is culture. Okay,
Yes.
so if you come up through an organization and you're a team member, you are exposed to culture. So you try to build in the same culture. The only way to win as a sales leader is to build your own culture.
Yes.
Because that can follow you where you go. That's where you learn. And it's a very hard thing to do. I mean, here I have a co-VP of sales, so we couldn't be more different. Now, we know the end goal, and we have gotten really good at our yin-yang of how we get to the end goal. But if we had 2 meetings on the same topic, they would be the furthest thing from they'd be the complete opposite. It works for us.
Yes.
But at the same time, it is on a manager to build their own culture. Not an easy thing. So, all right, so let's rewind a little bit. I want to talk COVID. Joe, start with you. So, the amount of money they were giving to businesses, the amount of people I know started fraudulent business just to take money, the amount of who can get fired where. I mean, the issues we had in this office, and it was just as I was being promoted to manager that I'm thrown into the fire. And Bad timing. But look, one thing I learned is that a lot of these problems are always treated with emotion, and a lot of times you have to take emotion out of it, and you have to look at things like, here is the facts, here are these things laid out. When you pull that emotion out of it and you look at it that way, one, it's hard because these are human beings.
Yes.
But two, you're being objective, not subjective, which is how you have to look at these things. What did you see out there?
100%. So I travel a ton for work. because
Do you go to Philly often?
I do go to Philly. That's the home office of our law firm.
Do you love Philly? I was just there. I was there for our Friendsgiving. I was there twice this year. My best friend lives literally next to the street Benjamin Franklin was, that old city area.
Gotcha.
And it is one of my favorite places on earth. It has a lot of the stuff that New York has, the charm, except it's like 1/3 the price. And most places are BYOB, and you can just walk in with like a jug of wine and drink all night. No one cares.
Yes, it's so I do enjoy going there. But in terms of my world and clients' world, so I'm traveling a ton, pretty much every week, and then the world shuts down mid-March of 2020. So COVID was somewhere between 2 weeks and 2 years as you look at it, right?
Yep.
And so...
We're in Atlanta, so 3.5 weeks.
But again, if you look at it from being in Philly or being in New York the impact of COVID versus Atlanta, or talk to clients and friends who are in San Francisco,
completely
they're
different.
looking at us like, you guys are in denial.
Yeah.
We can't even go out of our house. We can't do anything.
So a quick story on that. My father was the CEO of Elmhurst Hospital. He retired at 59 and a half. Wasn't supposed to. Woke up at 59 and a half. He's like, done. Called in, retired on the spot. But when you saw the ice trucks packing bodies in it, when they was on all over the TV, that was my dad's hospital.
Oh my gosh.
So they pretty much, he was out and completely done. And they're like, you have to get back here. I don't care. You have to get back here.
Yeah, because they were using the Javits Center.
It was Elmhurst Hospital. It was number one. Now, Elmhurst Hospital happens to be the location in New York with the most undocumented immigrants. It's the most densely populated part of Queens, and it has the only helipad in the area because it's not in Manhattan. So it was just a cluster. But I literally saw it on the TV, and I was like, oh my God. I mean, just to see what my father had to deal with his whole life. But anyway, yes, it was treated very differently up there than it was here.
So treated differently. So it just... And it's a good thing you said of objectivity versus subjectivity. So a lot of companies went from going gangbusters to their business is shut down.
Yeah.
So they have to let 1/3 of their company go, or 60% of the company go. And so what that did is it brought all sorts of employment claims. And then you had COVID claims, and you had, the business-related claims. And so to your point of people calling and asking questions of that had never come up before, we'll figure it out.
And there was no precedent.
We'll figure it out.
Law works on precedent, right?
Yes, we can help you with that. It had never been, and hopefully it'll never happen again.
Yeah. But at the same time, you're single-handedly responsible to some extent for setting new precedent, right?
Yes.
Because these are new things, and when you establish precedent in law, that's what the next cases are based on. They look back to these precedent cases.
And so it wasn't just litigation. Like we were talking about the liquor business. I have a dear friend, the guy that got me the website, justapoorcountrylawyer.com, is in the events business in San Francisco. And his company, Wine Meets Cheese, they pivoted overnight because they went from fully booked to 0 events. Okay, how is he going to make money? Online. Calls. Hey, Joe, can we ship here? Can we do this?
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll find you the right people to figure it out. Yeah. So you had to pivot. You had to figure it out.
And that's where being small and dynamic was better, nimble. The big companies were never going to figure it out. The bureaucracy is too great. Those small companies, one of the things that I've been hearing, there were no sports and there was nobody in cars. We are sports radio. So what the hell are we going to do? But we came into work every day, and I think it was about... let's say it started in March. We had just found out March Madness wasn't going to be here.
Yep.
All the seasons were canceled. It was a kick right in the cojones to have this all happen. But we looked and we said, you know what did we do wrong? And we have no digital infrastructure. Everyone's now relying on this digital. We don't have it. So we looked and we started. I think it was about May, after I got over the fact that my wife was telling me I was crazy for coming into work every day. But I was like, first of all, there's nobody in the Battery. This is probably the safest place I could be. There's nobody here. Right. So I came in here every day, and it was about April. I go, you know what? The work that I put in over the next year and a half, however long this is, will dictate the rest of my career, because I figured so much stuff out. And the reason was all these people from these companies weren't working with clients. I had their sole attention. People that used to work with 200 people at the same time were only working with me because nobody else was working. Right. So I got their full attention. So we retrofitted this company. We have so much infrastructure that we would have never had with COVID. But I see the other side of it. I see the fear. Now, ironically, all my family in New York telling me I'm crazy for coming into work every day. Guess where I get COVID? From my sister-in-law attorney in New York.
There you go.
Is the one who gave me over dinner, the one who was like, I can't believe you're putting everybody at risk. Fly up. She's the one who gives me COVID. Of course how it works. And look, I think, again, precedent is important here, but it's also a lot of times people just need a shoulder to cry on, and they just want to get it off their chest. How do you How do you handle that? How do you handle because again, a lawyer to some extent, all these jobs have blurred. Cops have become psychologists.
Yep.
They've all blurred. And the expectations we have of people are not based on the job descriptions or reality. How do you handle the people that are coming in that you just want the shoulder to cry on, that just someone to hear them versus what's a real case and what's something that you can actually litigate?
Well, and mine is all 99% on the defense standpoint. So companies are getting sued unless, it's a non-compete case where we're the plaintiff. But by and large, but where I have that phenomenon to where you're talking about is where an HR person, human resources at a company, or a manager who's getting accused of whatever, they're venting to me about being involved in this case. How do I get involved in this? How am I going to tell my wife? How is this going to work out? Where the line is blurred from, am I giving legal advice here, to where
it's a shrink?
Am I Dr. Phil? Because, I'm not really good at being Dr. Phil, so I'll steal his line and go, well, how's that working out for you? So,
and lawyers get paid a higher hourly rate. So,
and then the other reason you said that is the way to cut some of those off is, we're billing you for this. So then they get really quiet.
Just start billing by the minute. It's not even the hour anymore. You know what? We're going to switch to by the minute. We need to wrap this up. Speaking of wrapping it up, holy crap, we went really long on this segment. We're going to come back, and then we're going to go to you because I want to talk. Booze is the one that's most interesting to me. I do want to briefly talk about Coca-Cola because the legacy that they have formed in the employees leaving has been amazing.
Yeah.
My experience with the Coca-Cola employees hasn't been the same with the people that left. Some of them, I think, were riding the coattails in the 70s and 80s too hard, and they think that they're God's gift and they have no actual skill sets whatsoever. But anyway, that's a good way to end this segment. So you've been listening to the Marketing MadMen on Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back.